Continuing from where we left off, Wang Dong used the pretext of needing to obtain a soul ring to lead Huo Yuhao back to the Haotian sect, where they paid their respects to the two sect masters. However, Wang Dong secretly sought to add a soul ring for himself, while Huo Yuhao, through Electrolux's sacrifice, acquired a snow spirit in the form of the snow goddess. By combining this snow spirit with his own soul skills, Huo Yuhao managed to severely limit Titan's movements during a sparring match, nearly injuring him. Titan was astonished by Huo Yuhao's abilities, especially his coordination with the snow goddess and his use of the ice explosion technique. Niu Tian couldn't help but twitch the corners of his mouth slightly as he patted Huo Yuhao on the shoulder. He's fine. But the power of your great cold without snow, combined with the ice explosion technique, is indeed formidable. You can use this as your trump card in the future. But remember, don't reveal this secret to anyone. After all, its weakness of requiring close range is quite obvious. I won't tell anyone, except Wang Dong, Huo Yuhao replied instinctively. A flash of surprise crossed Niu Tian's eyes before he smiled. All right, keep refining your skills. With that, he turned and headed back to Haotian Castle. As he reached the entrance, he made a point of opening the castle doors to let some fresh air in before walking inside. Soon after, a thunderous roar echoed from within the castle. Titan, get out here. That foul stench you let out could suffocate 30 miles against the wind. I'm going to beat you to death. Huo Yuhao finally let out a laugh. These two sect masters were truly interesting. Warmth filled his heart as he thought about how he had gone from being an outsider to being gradually accepted. It felt good. Though Titan had seemed fierce during the sparring match, had he actually used any offensive or restraining soul skills against him? Not at all. Titan had merely stood there like a target, letting Huo Yuhao attack freely. Otherwise, with his cultivation level, Huo Yuhao wouldn't have had so many chances to unleash his soul skills. I need to work hard and quickly master my coordination with the snow goddess, he resolved. Focusing inward, Huo Yuhao first checked his remaining soul power. Even after that intense series of attacks, he still had over half of his soul power left. His recovery rate was notably faster as well. The frigid winds atop Haotian Peak seemed to enhance his energy absorption, boosting his soul power recovery rate by a full 20% compared to before. Without a doubt, this was one of the benefits brought by the snow goddess. As long as he was in a cold environment or near water, his recovery ability would significantly improve. Moreover, when he performed the Great Cold without snow, Huo Yuhao clearly felt that not only did it not deplete his soul power, but it actually replenished it. It was as if he absorbed all the energy from the snow dance ice domain and converted it into his own attack. What an extraordinary and powerful soul skill. The Snow Empress spirit didn't just enhance his combat strength. It greatly increased his endurance in prolonged battles as well. Without continuing to coordinate with the snow goddess, Huo Yuhao found a spot on the peak to sit cross-legged and enter a meditative state. He needed to calm his mind and carefully consider how to better integrate the three abilities granted by the Snow Empress with his own powers, and how to fully harness and control the changes brought about by the orange-gold snow spirit. One thing he was certain of. If the battlefield were in the extreme north, with the snow goddess's immense power, he would already be capable of single-handedly challenging a seven-ringed expert with a martial soul avatar. As he pondered, Huo Yuhao gradually sank deeper into a state of meditation. Strangely, the wind and mist that drifted towards him seemed to vanish on their own before they could reach him. A faint orange aura began to envelop his body. The little snow goddess seemed to really like the surroundings here. At some point, without anyone noticing, she had already perched herself on Huo Yuhao's shoulder. Her tiny and adorable form even managed to sit cross-legged, looking just like a porcelain doll. Only the faint glimmers of orange-golden light hinted at her extraordinary nature. For 2 consecutive days, Huo Yuhao was completely immersed in his cultivation. Niu Tian and Titan didn't interfere, letting him explore his insights on his own. Huo Yuhao rarely returned to his room. He usually stood at the peak, gazing into the distant sea of clouds, reminiscing about his departed teacher, while also reflecting on his own changes. Until, I'm back. A dazzling blue-golden light suddenly appeared in the sky, catching the attention of Huo Yuhao, who was gazing out at the clouds. He looked up instinctively, only to see Wang Dong descending from the sky with his radiant goddess butterfly wings spread wide, heading straight towards him. Huo Yuhao's mouth fell open as he exclaimed, "You? How did you come back from the sky? Are you able to fly at such a high altitude using just your martial soul? You do realize that Haotian Peak is at least 3,000 meters high. Even a titled Doluo wouldn't be able to fly at such heights without the aid of a 9th-level flying soul-guided tool. The higher the altitude, the thinner the air. Adjusting one's soul power requires breathing. Even though your martial soul naturally has wings, it's impossible for you to fly at such a high altitude." Wang Dong smiled mysteriously and said, "That's a secret of our Haotian sect. I can't tell you unless you become one of us." Huo Yuhao replied, "If I hadn't joined the Tang clan, I might have considered joining your Haotian sect, but that's clearly not possible now." Wang Dong chuckled. "That might not be set in stone. Who knows what opportunities might arise in the future? Anyway, let's not dwell on that. Did you miss me while I was gone?" Huo Yuhao laughed. "Why would I miss you? You're not even a girl. If you introduced me to your sister, I might miss her." Wang Dong snorted, "Look at you, always prioritizing beauty over friendship." Huo Yuhao chuckled, "So, how did it go? What did you gain from this trip?" Wang Dong held up his index and middle fingers. "Mission accomplished." Huo Yuhao eagerly asked, "What soul skill did you acquire?" Wang Dong teased, "That's a secret. You'll find out after you return from the Sun Moon Royal Soul Guiding Master Academy. But trust me, it's incredibly powerful." Huo Yuhao smiled mysteriously. "Fine, don't tell me. I have a secret of my own. I wonder if you'd like to hear it." "What secret?" Wang Dong looked at him with curiosity. Huo Yuhao imitated Wang Dong's earlier tone. "You'll find out when I get back from the Sun Moon Royal Soul Guiding Master Academy. But trust me, it's incredibly powerful." "You?" Wang Dong huffed. "I went all the way from Shrek to the Sun Moon Empire just to find you. And you're playing mind games with me? Do you have any sense of decency?" Huo Yuhao couldn't help but laugh at Wang Dong's indignant stance, with his hands on his hips. All right, I'll let you win this time. Snow Goddess, come here." At Huo Yuhao's soft call, the orange-golden light flashed, and the tiny figure of the Snow Goddess flew out, her little white belly band fluttering as she hovered between Huo Yuhao and Wang Dong, facing Wang Dong. The moment the Snow Goddess appeared, Wang Dong's eyes glazed over. He stared at the exquisitely beautiful little baby girl, his gaze softening instantly. "Wow, such an adorable little girl. What's going on here?" Wang Dong reached out to touch the Snow Goddess as he spoke. "Stop," Huo Yuhao quickly warned, recalling the incident with Titan. He was genuinely worried that the Snow Goddess might hurt Wang Dong. After all, this little girl was far from harmless. Even without using soul skills in conjunction with Huo Yuhao, she was powerful enough to rival a Soul King-level expert, especially with her ultimate ice attribute. But to Huo Yuhao's surprise, the Snow Goddess didn't show any signs of resistance towards Wang Dong. She allowed him to gently stroke her soft little cheek. Then with a swift motion, she snuggled into Wang Dong's arms, letting him hold her chubby little body. In just 1 second, the Snow Goddess had completely won over Wang Dong. His gaze was now so tender it was as if he were looking at a younger sister. "She's too cute. Her skin is so soft, it's delightful to touch. Let me give her a kiss." Wang Dong lifted the Snow Goddess closer to his lips, planting a gentle kiss on her tender little cheek. The Snow Goddess giggled and, instead of resisting, leaned in to kiss Wang Dong back. Wang Dong quickly turned his head, so her kiss landed on his cheek instead, and he said seriously, "Not there. Boys and girls shouldn't be too intimate." Huo Yuhao couldn't help but laugh. "You've already hugged and kissed her, and now you're talking about propriety? And you, little one, what's going on? You're already smitten with handsome guys at such a young age? You're even ditching your own dad?" "Dad? You mean you?" Wang Dong's eyes widened as he stared at Huo Yuhao, his expression turning odd. If Huo Yuhao had to describe it, he would say menacing might be the right word. "Why are you getting so worked up? It's just a term of endearment. Snow Goddess, come back?" Huo Yuhao, feeling a bit jealous, called her back. Watching the snow goddess and Wang Dong being so affectionate made him feel a bit uncomfortable. Wang Dong released the snow goddess, allowing her to fly back into Huo Yuhao's arms. He then stepped forward, closing the distance until he was just a foot away from Huo Yuhao, glaring at him with trembling words. You have a daughter now? When did this happen? Tell me, what's gotten into you, Wang Dong? Huo Yuhao asked, puzzled. Wang Dong suddenly grabbed him by the collar. Tell me, is it that orange girl? How could you do this to me and my sister? Huo Yuhao was utterly confused. What are you talking about? What does your sister have to do with this? And what does this have to do with orange? Didn't you hear what I called her? Snow goddess? Wang Dong was momentarily stunned. Huo Yuhao suddenly realized that while he had confided many things to the two sect masters, he hadn't shared much with Wang Dong. With an apologetic look, he said, there are some things that I really should tell you. Wang Dong's face paled as he took 2 steps back. I don't want to hear it. Don't say anything. With that, he turned and ran toward Haoyan Castle. What's going on? Huo Yuhao felt like he was going crazy. Wang Dong seemed off ever since he returned. Of course, he couldn't just let Wang Dong run off like that, so he quickly darted after him. The snow goddess was quite helpful, pointing her finger and instantly summoning a deep blue light that formed an ice wall, sealing off the entrance to Haoyan Castle. Wang Dong seemed to realize something and stopped in his tracks. He turned to look at Huo Yuhao and then at the snow goddess with her clear, innocent eyes. Fine, tell me. Huo Yuhao quickly walked up to him and explained everything about his connection with the Snow Empress, as well as the circumstances involving his teacher. He even recounted the encounter with the Ice Empress in the extreme north, leaving out only the secret of the Sky Dream Ice Worm, which had changed his fate. Wang Dong listened in shock. So you're saying that your second martial soul wasn't something you were born with? It only became your second martial soul after merging with the Ice Jade Scorpion Emperor? You have 2 of the 3 great kings of the extreme north within you? My God! And you kept all of this from me? Huo Yuhao responded with a wry smile. Wang Dong, don't be angry. Think about it. If you were in my shoes, could you really share such a secret so easily? Aren't you worried that someone might try to dissect you? Just think about the value of the soul bones I carry alone. Wang Dong's expression gradually calmed down. I'm not angry anymore. You're really like the weather in June, changing so quickly. Were you just messing with me earlier? Yes, I was messing with you. So what? Wang Dong replied, unabashed. You win. Huo Yuhao instantly recalled Titan's helpless expression when dealing with the snow goddess. Soul spirits, what an interesting concept. I never imagined that as soul masters, we could have something beyond soul rings and soul bones. Yuhao, do you think you could create another soul spirit? Wang Dong asked. In theory, it should be possible. And it definitely wouldn't be as dangerous as when I fused with the Snow Empress. After all, the Snow Empress's power was overwhelming, and that terrifying situation was nearly irreversible. But even so, merging with a soul spirit requires a significant toll on one's spiritual power. According to my calculations, the more powerful the soul spirit, the more difficult the fusion process will be. Are you thinking of giving it a try? Wang Dong was visibly eager. Of course. Don't forget, I also have twin martial souls. If you can fuse with a soul spirit as powerful as the Snow Empress, why can't I fuse with a soul spirit that's less powerful but more suitable for me? Huo Yuhao asked, when do you plan to give it a shot? Wang Dong replied, when do you think you'll have absolute confidence in succeeding? Huo Yuhao responded, absolute confidence is hard to guarantee since I haven't tried controlling the fusion of a soul spirit by myself yet. Unfortunately, my teacher... His expression dimmed as he spoke. Wang Dong gently patted his shoulder. Yuhao, don't be sad. Didn't Big Uncle and Second Uncle say that your teacher passed away peacefully? And the fact that he created the secret method of soul spirits means he's left an indelible mark on the Dolua continent. What you should do now is to carry forward the soul spirit technique your teacher left behind. I don't mind being your test subject. Besides, I'm guessing it would be impossible to create another soul spirit as powerful as the Snow Empress. After all, though it was dangerous, it resulted in the Snow Goddess and you. Maybe you could create a soul spirit just for me that only takes up one soul ring slot? Here's an idea. After the All-Continent Advanced Soul Master Academy Soul Battle Tournament, you can come to our Haotian sect. We have plenty of disciples who can help you experiment with soul spirits and perfect this ability. Huo Yuhao nodded. We have to try it out sooner or later. Wang Dong added, I'll talk to Big Uncle and Second Uncle and ask them to tell the sect disciples who are nearing a bottleneck not to add any soul rings for the time being. Then we can start looking for some soul beasts that are nearing the end of their lifespan. There are plenty of soul beasts that die because they can't break through. I'm sure finding such soul beasts won't be difficult. The bottleneck for soul beasts isn't limited to those with 100,000 years of cultivation. For lower-level soul beasts, every 100 years is a threshold. 100 years of evolution turns into 1,000, 1,000 into 10,000, and every 10,000 years after that becomes increasingly difficult to surpass. Otherwise, if soul beasts had existed in this world for so long without such challenges, the continent would already be filled with 100,000-year-old beings. Huo Yuhao sighed with relief. If we could use this method to resolve the conflict between soul masters and soul beasts, it would be ideal. Even if it doesn't completely resolve the issue, it should at least ease the tension. Wang Dong's successful acquisition of his 6th soul ring also marked the end of their journey to Haotian Castle. After bidding farewell to Niu Tian and Titan, the two of them descended from Haotian Peak. They traveled south, finally parting ways at the midpoint between the Sun Moon Royal Soul Guiding Master Academy and Shrek Academy. This separation was far less emotional than the last. After all, Huo Yuhao had only a few months left in his studies at the Sun Moon Royal Soul Guiding Master Academy. In just a few months, he would be returning to Shrek. For some reason, Huo Yuhao felt that Wang Dong was acting mysteriously when they parted, even a bit shy. The way Wang Dong looked at him at the end was particularly strange. But Huo Yuhao didn't think too much of it. Having shared most of his secrets with Wang Dong was a relief for him. And just as the two Haotian sect masters had said, now that he had the Snow Empress as a soul spirit, he finally had the power to stand on his own. With continued diligent cultivation, his strength was bound to increase at an accelerated rate. With all 5 soul rings of his second martial soul in place, Huo Yuhao's soul power naturally continued to grow. His training speed had noticeably increased during this period, and while he was still not on par with Wang Dong, the influence of the ultimate martial soul had significantly lessened with the presence of the little snow goddess. Glancing back at Wang Dong's disappearing figure, Huo Yuhao took to the air, pushing his flying soul-guiding tool to full power, and headed straight for the Sun Moon Royal Soul Guiding Master Academy. Before leaving there, he had one extremely important task to complete. These final few months were critical. From a distance, Wang Dong made almost the same motion as Huo Yuhao, gazing into the distance. A faint blush colored his handsome face. He really is an idiot. As he spoke, he pulled out a small embroidered pouch from his chest, recalling what Niu Tian had told him before leaving Haotian sect. Donger, after thorough observation, both your second uncle and I believe that Huo Yuhao is quite exceptional. He's much more mature than his peers, and his feelings for you are sincere. However, whether the two of you can truly reach that point depends on fate. Big Uncle is giving you this pouch. If one day you and he do reach that point, give it to him. This pouch wasn't made by me. It was handcrafted by your father. He said that only after fulfilling the task within this pouch will he be qualified to be with you. Big Uncle, when will my father return? Why can't I ever remember his face? Big Uncle doesn't know either. But I'm certain that if you ever get married, your father and mother will definitely come back. Then I should hurry. No. Matters of a lifetime cannot be taken lightly. Big Uncle trusts your judgment. Keep the pouch safe, and remember, you must not peek inside. Your father's spiritual seal is on it, so you wouldn't be able to see the contents anyway. Wang Dong shook the blue pouch in his hand, filled with curiosity. What could be inside? Why did he need to give it to Yuhao? What was his father planning? As these thoughts ran through his mind, a hint of dissatisfaction appeared in his eyes. Dad, Mom, you've never come to see me, and yet you still want to control my life? Humph. Despite these thoughts, Wang Dong carefully tucked the pouch back into his chest. He wondered, when Yuhao returned from the Sun Moon Royal Soul Guiding Master Academy, Would it be time to give him this pouch? At this thought, a deep blush spread across Wang Dong's face, making him look impossibly radiant. When Huo Yuhao returned to the Sun Moon Royal Soul Guiding Master Academy, Lin Jiai, the teaching director, who had been growing increasingly anxious during Huo Yuhao's long absence, finally relaxed and reported his return to Jing Hongqian. Recently, Jing Hongqian hadn't been paying much attention to the academy's affairs. The competition for the throne had reached a critical point. Although the crown prince held a significant advantage, his weakness was evident. His disability was a major detriment to the nation's image. His two rivals constantly exploited this flaw to attack him, and the emperor's health was deteriorating by the day. As a result, Jing Hongqian's only thought regarding the exchange students was to ensure they completed their studies safely. He didn't want to play any tricks at this time. Everything would be dealt with after the crown prince's claim to the throne was secured. Jing Hongqian was not one to make decisions lightly, but once he did, he was determined to win. Returning to the Sun Moon Royal Soul Guiding Master Academy, Huo Yuhao resumed his quiet life. Though the pace of his life had noticeably quickened, this was most evident to his mentor, Xian Ziwen. Typically, when Huo Yuhao crafted and studied soul guiding tools, he only used ordinary metals. He had been frugal with the rare metals he had obtained from Mingda Hall over the years. But after returning, Xian Ziwen noticed that Huo Yuhao was using various rare metals in his crafting and research, and he even asked for help in refining some alloys. Huo Yuhao was constantly busy crafting and conducting simple experiments. Yet, despite Xian Ziwen's deep knowledge of soul-guiding tools, he couldn't figure out what Huo Yuhao was working on. He could sense that Huo Yuhao's creations bore some resemblance to the Zhuge divine crossbow, which had once amazed him, but these were far more complex. Xian Ziwen had inquired about it, but Huo Yuhao always responded with a smile. He didn't hide his work, but the most crucial parts were always done in his room. What Xian Ziwen saw were just the components being made. Even though there were times when core formations were inscribed, many of those formations were techniques Xian Ziwen himself had taught Huo Yuhao. So what was there to see? And so, time passed day by day. For 4 whole months, 120 days, Huo Yuhao seemed to have completely immersed himself in a state of intense focus. Every day, he nearly mechanically crafted and studied soul-guiding tools. Besides that, he spent his time meditating. His routine was a straight line between the laboratory and his dormitory, and he spoke very little. Even Fan Yu felt that he was up to something big. But Fan Yu didn't ask. This was the Sun Moon Royal Soul Guiding Master Academy, and everything could be questioned once they returned to Shrek. He had full confidence in his student, Teacher Xian. Xian Ziwen was making his daily rounds in the Mingda Hall when Huo Yuhao called out to him as he passed by his workstation. A faint smile appeared on Xian Ziwen's face. Yuhao, it's been over a month since you last spoke to me voluntarily. Do you finally have a question? Huo Yuhao looked exhausted, but his eyes were exceptionally bright. Teacher Xian, may I visit your office tonight? Our exchange program is almost over, and there are some things I'd like to discuss with you. Xian Ziwen was taken aback for a moment. Yes, the time for this exchange program was indeed coming to an end. Although Huo Yuhao hadn't interacted with him much over the past few months, Xian Ziwen had noticed the dedication he put into researching and crafting soul-guiding tools. Moreover, he was such an outstanding soul master. What teacher wouldn't be fond of such a student? Of course. Without any hesitation, Xian Ziwen agreed to Huo Yuhao's request. Huo Yuhao smiled faintly, his eyes filled with confidence. Although it was only noon, he tidied up his workstation and, after scanning the area, bid farewell to Xian Ziwen and left the Mingda Hall laboratory. In just 2 days, he would be leaving this place and returning to Shrek Academy. But before he left, there was an important task he had to complete. Finally caught you. Let's see where you run off to this time. Just as Huo Yuhao stepped out of Mingda Hall, he ran into trouble. Jing Zian looked at him with ill intent, and not far away, the ever-cool Ji Juechen, with his recently repaired meteorite sword slung over his shoulder, was also eyeing him. Huo Yuhao smiled wryly. You too. I really don't want to fight today. I'm exhausted, haven't rested in months. Can you let me off the hook? Jing Zian snorted. You haven't rested in months? We haven't given you any trouble for months. Last time you told us you had something important to do, so we let you off. and then you went into hiding. Now that we've finally caught you, don't even think about slipping away with some excuse." Huo Yuhao sighed. "You don't have to keep pestering me. We probably won't have many chances to spar in the future anyway. In 2 days, I'll be leaving. I promise you before I go, I'll spar with you both one last time." "You're leaving?" The aggressive expression on Jing Ziyan's face suddenly disappeared, replaced by a look of surprise as she stared at Huo Yuhao. Not far away, Ji Juechen also lowered the meteorite sword from his shoulder, his gaze fixed on Huo Yuhao. "Yes, our exchange program is ending. The day after tomorrow, I'll be returning to Shrek Academy. Even though you two are quite bothersome, I still consider you friends. So this time, I'm not brushing you off. Before I leave, I'll make sure to give you a good beating," Huo Yuhao said earnestly. Jing Ziyan furrowed her brows, and Ji Juechen simply turned and walked away, no longer pressing the matter. Jing Ziyan glanced at Huo Yuhao, then followed Ji Juechen. Huo Yuhao shouted after them, "What kind of reaction is that? Aren't you going to say something emotional? At least see me off properly." But neither Jing Ziyan nor Ji Juechen paid him any mind. Instead, they quickened their pace as if they had something urgent to do. "Those ungrateful jerks," Huo Yuhao grumbled under his breath. To his surprise, he suddenly realized that after more than 2 years, he actually felt a bit reluctant to leave this place. Despite it being an enemy camp of sorts, he had made many profound memories here. Teacher Xin Ziwen, Kiki, Zimu, and his 2 close friends. And of course, senior sister Orange. No matter how much he had schemed against Mingda Hall and the Sun Moon Royal Soul Guiding Master Academy, diligently learning and immersing himself in cultivation, over the course of more than 2 years, he had grown fond of this place. It wasn't the academy itself he was attached to, but the people. Back at the dormitory, Huo Yuhao did something unusual. He didn't meditate. Instead, he collapsed onto his bed. As soon as he closed his eyes, he fell into a deep sleep. He was utterly exhausted and desperately needed a good rest. He slept like the dead, oblivious to the world until the sound of someone knocking on his dormitory door woke him up. "Who is it?" Rubbing his sleepy eyes, Huo Yuhao groggily got up from bed, feeling an unexpected sense of fatigue. He knew this was due to his body finally relaxing after months of strain. "It's me," a familiar but slightly displeased voice responded. Huo Yuhao jolted awake, realizing he had overslept. He quickly got up and rushed to open the door. As expected, standing outside was none other than his mentor at the Sun Moon Royal Soul Guiding Master Academy, Xin Ziwen. "Teacher Xin, I'm sorry, I overslept," Huo Yuhao said awkwardly, inviting him in. Xin Ziwen didn't seem too upset, but he looked at Huo Yuhao with a bit of surprise. "You? Oversleep?" "Yeah," Huo Yuhao admitted, nodding apologetically. Xin Ziwen gazed at his student with a mix of emotions. Although he was Huo Yuhao's mentor, the time he had spent directly teaching Huo Yuhao about soul guiding tools was only about 6 months, not including some of the core content of Mingda Hall. But during that time, he had imparted some of the most important theories about soul guiding tools to Huo Yuhao. He had told his student back then, "A teacher leads you to the door, but the practice is your own." What happened next would depend on Huo Yuhao's own efforts in learning and research. For the next several months, Huo Yuhao had come to him almost daily with a pile of questions. Aside from a few confidential matters, Xin Ziwen had answered everyone. But as time went on, Huo Yuhao's questions became fewer and fewer, going from dozens a day to a handful, and then to just a few every few days. In recent months, Huo Yuhao hadn't asked him any questions at all. Xin Ziwen had no doubts about his student's talent, but he didn't think Huo Yuhao would ever become a top-tier soul engineer. The reason was simple: his martial soul was too powerful. As a strong soul master, the cultivation and use of one's martial soul were deeply ingrained. Xin Ziwen could see that while Huo Yuhao enjoyed studying soul-guiding tools, his passion for his martial soul was far greater. And no one's energy is limitless. The higher one's cultivation, the more focus is required to grasp advanced knowledge. With twin martial souls and the ultimate martial soul, how could Huo Yuhao devote most of his energy to studying soul-guiding tools? Still, Xin Ziwen was filled with curiosity about Huo Yuhao, or rather, about his research. Ever since Huo Yuhao had impressed him with the Zhuge Divine Crossbow, Xian Ziwen had closely followed his research direction. But Huo Yuhao was exceptionally good at concealing his true intentions. Despite his expertise in soul-guiding tools, Xian Ziwen couldn't decipher what Huo Yuhao was working on. The 2.5 years of the exchange program were finally coming to an end, and Huo Yuhao would soon return to Shrek Academy. Xian Ziwen felt a sense of loss. Not being a native of the Sun Moon Empire, Xian Ziwen had no animosity toward Huo Yuhao. The only thing that truly captivated him in this world was soul-guiding tools. He greatly admired Huo Yuhao's talent in this area, and although he knew it was unlikely, he still hoped Huo Yuhao would develop further in this field. So, what is it you wanted to talk to me about? Xian Ziwen asked, standing in place as he watched Huo Yuhao close the door. It wasn't that he didn't want to sit down, but Huo Yuhao's room was a complete mess. The floor was littered with metal components, far messier than when Wang Dong had visited. Even the bed wasn't spared. Huo Yuhao quickly cleared a path with his foot and picked up a chair, shaking off the items on it. Please, have a seat, Teacher Xian. Xian Ziwen frowned slightly. Yuhao, you don't usually seem like such a messy person. Why is your room in such a state? Huo Yuhao replied, I couldn't help it. Some things can only be made in my room to keep them secret. Oh. Xian Ziwen's curiosity was piqued. He smiled. So, are you here today to show me your secret creation? Huo Yuhao hesitated for a moment, trying to clear the fog from his recently awakened mind. His spiritual power circulated, causing his spirit eyes to flash briefly. Teacher Xian, do you remember our bet from before? Huo Yuhao asked. Xian Ziwen said, Of course I remember. What's this? Have you managed to produce 10 works of that level? Don't worry, I'm true to my word. If you can present them, I'll go wherever you want me to. Huo Yuhao shook his head. I don't have 10, but I would like to show you 2 of my creations. These are the culmination of my efforts since coming to the Sun Moon Royal Soul Guiding Master Academy. At the same time, I hope they will be of some help to you. Xian Ziwen's eyes lit up, and he immediately straightened up. You mean you've developed 2 new types of soul guiding tools? Quickly, show me. His enthusiasm for soul-guiding tools made him forget everything else. Huo Yuhao said, Teacher Xian, one of these creations can be shown to you directly, but I'd prefer to reveal the second one afterward. However, the first item I want to show you cannot be demonstrated here. The space is too small, and it's one of my secrets. If you want to see it, we'll need to use a special method. What special method? Xian Ziwen asked, puzzled. Huo Yuhao explained. I can use my spiritual power to project the images I've stored in my memory directly into your mind. Is that even possible? Xian Ziwen was shocked. Although he knew Huo Yuhao was a spiritual-type soul master, the complexity of transmitting memories through spiritual power was something he didn't fully grasp, but he knew it required an extremely high level of spiritual power. Huo Yuhao nodded. I can do it, but it requires you to trust me completely so that I can fully project the memory into your mind. Xian Ziwen responded almost without hesitation. Then what are we waiting for? Let's begin. Now it was Huo Yuhao's turn to be surprised. Teacher Xian, to let me project my memory into your mind, you'll need to completely open your spiritual defenses. Aren't you worried about? Xian Ziwen smiled calmly. What's there to be afraid of? I've been your teacher for more than 2 years. If I didn't understand your character by now, I'd be a failure of a teacher. Enough with the unnecessary words. Go ahead. As he spoke, he had already sat down and closed his eyes. A look of genuine respect flashed in Huo Yuhao's eyes. At least he knew that if the roles were reversed, he would never open his spiritual sea to allow another's spiritual power to enter. A faint golden light began to glow in Huo Yuhao's eyes as he stood in front of Xian Ziwen. The golden light grew stronger, and strange, distorted ripples of spiritual power started to appear throughout the room. Soft golden waves radiated from Huo Yuhao's head, and a thin layer of gold began to manifest on the surface of his body. After merging with the Snow Empress as his soul spirit, Huo Yuhao's spiritual power had reached new heights. Even he wasn't sure exactly how powerful he had become, but he was now capable of performing new abilities. 2 beams of golden light shot out from his eyes. The light appeared gentle, but the moment it emerged, The entire room was filled with a strange atmosphere. Xian Ziwen's body trembled as he felt a powerful force enter his spiritual sea. Instinctively, he wanted to resist, but as a Soul Dolua-level soul engineer, he quickly suppressed that impulse, allowing the spiritual power to enter. However, he wasn't entirely unguarded. He pulled his own spiritual power back, surrounding his spiritual core. A human's spiritual power gradually increases with the growth of their soul power because strong abilities require strong enough spiritual power to control them. Xian Ziwen, who was deeply devoted to studying soul-guiding tools and spent nearly all his time in thought, had stronger spiritual power than most soul masters of his level. But even so, he was shocked to find that the spiritual power entering his spiritual sea was at least as strong as his own. What was even more surprising was that after this spiritual power made contact with his own, it actively began to harmonize with it. Xian Ziwen could clearly feel the immense pressure brought upon him by Huo Yuhao's spiritual power as it entered his spiritual sea. He realized that if Huo Yuhao had chosen to attack him at that moment, he would have been in an extremely passive position. But this was all hypothetical. Just as Xian Ziwen was feeling astonished, images suddenly began to appear in his mind. At first, they were simple, singular images, but they quickly connected, forming a moving sequence. It was a desolate landscape, surrounded by mountains and rocks. The location wasn't clear from the images, and the surroundings were eerily quiet. The viewpoint was from a high altitude, looking down on the entire scene. In the vast field of view, there was only one person, Huo Yuhao. Huo Yuhao stood on a small hill, gazing up at the sky. Xian Ziwen was shocked to discover that a third eye had appeared on Huo Yuhao's forehead. At first, he thought he was seeing things, so he focused his spiritual power more intently and clearly saw that the vertical eye on Huo Yuhao's forehead was glowing with a golden light, giving him the eerie feeling that it was staring directly at him. A third eye? Could it be that his spirit eye's martial soul had undergone a secondary awakening, similar to what the body sect is known for? Despite being a soul engineer, Xian Ziwen had ample knowledge of soul master techniques, as one would expect from someone who had reached the level of an 8-ring soul dolua. Before he could think further, the image changed again. Huo Yuhao raised his right hand, revealing a large sapphire ring on his index finger. 6 dazzling star lines shimmered on the sapphire's surface, radiating brilliant light. A starlight sapphire. That's a rare treasure. Even though it's only about the size of a fingernail, it could be used to create a storage soul-guiding tool capable of holding 10 cubic meters of items. As a powerful soul engineer, Xian Ziwen's first thought upon seeing such a top-tier material was naturally its application in soul-guiding tools. At this moment, Huo Yuhao lifted his right hand, and the 6 star lines on the starlight sapphire ring spread out. With a flash of blue light, a towering object appeared in front of him. When Xian Ziwen saw this object, his mind went blank, and his entire body trembled violently as if struck by lightning. What was this? It was a metallic figure entirely cast in iron-gray metal. The figure stood about 3.5 meters tall and was shaped like a human. Its iron-gray surface was devoid of any ornate decorations, but the lines of its body were smooth and sleek. A humanoid soul-guiding tool? This was the source of Xian Ziwen's shock. He knew that one of Mingda Hall's most important research projects was the development of humanoid soul-guiding tools. This field represented a significant bottleneck in the advancement of soul-guiding tools. The potential uses for humanoid soul-guiding tools were vast, but the challenges were even greater. As one of the main researchers, Xian Ziwen was fully aware of all the difficulties involved. At that moment, Huo Yuhao presented a humanoid soul-guiding tool right in front of him, and it looked impressively well-made. How could Xian Ziwen not be shocked? He even suspected that Huo Yuhao might have somehow accessed the secrets of Mingda Hall. However, he still didn't believe that Huo Yuhao had successfully created a functioning humanoid soul-guiding tool. The reason was simple: the size. The concept of a humanoid soul-guiding tool isn't just about wearing a suit of armor on a soul master's body. It involves controlling the soul-guiding tool internally so that it can operate independently, much like how Huo Yuhao had once controlled an all-terrain detection soul-guiding tool, allowing it to move, fight, defend, and attack autonomously. All of this requires a large number of core formations working in combination and a powerful soul master to control them. The humanoid soul guiding tool that Huo Yuhao brought out was simply too small, only 3.5 meters tall. How many core formations could it possibly house? It likely wouldn't even be capable of making the humanoid soul guiding tool move as fluidly as a human. In the image, Huo Yuhao slowly approached the humanoid soul guiding tool. Without any visible trigger, the head of the tool began to change. The front faceplate lifted up, and then a straight vertical line of light appeared from the neck down to the lower body. The entire humanoid soul guiding tool split open from the center, revealing a hollow interior. Seeing the empty space inside, Xin Ziwen felt even more confident in his judgment. It seemed that Huo Yuhao intended to encase himself in this humanoid soul guiding tool and control it from within. Xin Ziwen relaxed a little. In his view, although this was indeed a humanoid soul guiding tool, it was more akin to a large suit of armor that Huo Yuhao would control himself, far from the type of internally controlled humanoid soul guiding tool that was their true goal. Sure enough, Huo Yuhao climbed inside, and the surface of the humanoid soul guiding tool closed around him, sealing him inside. However, the perspective suddenly shifted. Instead of the external aerial view, the image split into two perspectives, one observing the humanoid soul guiding tool up close, and the other showing the inside of the tool. Inside the humanoid soul guiding tool, Huo Yuhao didn't place his arms into the slots corresponding to the tool's arms. Instead, he kept his arms in front of him, where there were several control levers and a row of buttons. Xin Ziwen watched as Huo Yuhao pulled one of the control levers with his right hand. In the external view, the back of the humanoid soul guiding tool suddenly split open, revealing two massive wings. After pressing a few more buttons, 12 beams of light shot out from the wings, and the powerful thrust from the flying soul-guiding tools instantly propelled the metal figure into the air, shooting it straight up into the sky. The speed was astonishing, exceeding what a standard 7th-level soul-guiding tool could achieve. My God, did this kid really build 12 6th-level propulsion systems to enhance the thrust? And the balance is so well controlled. Plus, with the protection of the metal shell, he's significantly reducing the impact of airflow on his body. What? It's this agile? It can even perform these maneuvers in the air? How is this possible? His arms are manipulating the control levers, yet the humanoid soul-guiding tool's arms are moving. Could it be? Is this really a humanoid soul-guiding tool? No, that can't be. I don't believe it. After flying for a while, the humanoid soul-guiding tool landed on a flatter area of the ground. The two perspectives remained active, one still viewing from inside, where Huo Yuhao was now sitting cross-legged, essentially seated within the cockpit of the humanoid soul-guiding tool. The humanoid soul-guiding tool stood at 3.5 meters tall, with a torso thickness exceeding a meter. While the space inside was a bit cramped, it was still possible for Huo Yuhao to sit within it. He's trying to prove something to me? Xin Ziwen instantly understood Huo Yuhao's intention. Then, Huo Yuhao's hands began moving rapidly, manipulating the control levers and pressing the buttons in quick succession. The humanoid soul-guiding tool began to move. At first, it only took a few simple steps forward. Then, it started jumping, rolling, turning, and even performing more complex maneuvers like a cartwheel. Initially, Huo Yuhao's control was a bit clumsy, but as he grew more accustomed to it, the movements of the metal humanoid became increasingly fluid. Although it was still somewhat sluggish and not quite as agile as a human, it was important to note that Huo Yuhao was controlling the entire humanoid metal figure solely with his hands using the control levers and buttons. The fact that it maintained its balance was enough to shock Xin Ziwen. As the seconds ticked by, the metal humanoid continued its actions for a full 10 minutes before finally coming to a halt. It ended in a half-crouching position before slowly standing upright. Immediately afterward, Huo Yuhao inserted his legs and arms into the slots on either side of the cockpit. The control panel in front of him retracted, folding into the sides of his waist. The humanoid soul-guiding tool began to move again. With the dual perspectives, it was clear that this time, Huo Yuhao was externally projecting his soul power, fully controlling the humanoid metal figure with his own limbs and soul power. The agility level instantly increased by a whole tier. When Huo Yuhao began executing the ghost shadow perplexing track with the humanoid soul-guiding tool, Xin Ziwen felt as if he were being strangled. His emotions were boiling over. To the untrained eye, these might seem like simple movements, and the humanoid soul-guiding tool hadn't even displayed any offensive capabilities throughout the demonstration. But for Xin Ziwen, the implications were beyond profound. The image suddenly blurred, and everything began to return to normal. The spiritual power that had flowed into his spiritual sea receded like a tide. This is impossible. Xin Ziwen nearly shouted as he snapped back to reality, his emotions running wild. He stood up abruptly, unleashing a powerful wave of soul power that sent the scattered metal components on the ground flying. Even Huo Yuhao had to take a few steps back to steady himself. Sweat beaded on Xin Ziwen's forehead, and his eyes were tinged with red. He stared at Huo Yuhao like a raging bull and enunciated forcefully, "This is not possible. Tell me it's fake." Huo Yuhao calmly met his gaze and said, "Teacher Xin, you are an 8th-level soul engineer, perhaps even close to becoming a 9th-level soul engineer. Are you telling me you can't discern what's real? Even if what I just showed you was merely a projection of my memory, it doesn't mean I have the ability to create such images out of thin air." Xin Ziwen glared at him and demanded, "Then how did you record those images? And why were there different perspectives?" Huo Yuhao replied mildly, "I refuse to answer that question, as it pertains to the capabilities of my soul skills." Xin Ziwen took a couple of deep breaths, his anxiety evident as he paced back and forth in the room, even kicking aside scattered metal pieces without a second thought. On the other hand, Huo Yuhao seemed to have anticipated this reaction. Instead of moving around, he calmly sat down on the chair where Xin Ziwen had previously been seated, waiting quietly. In the dormitory, the two of them remained in this tense standoff, one in motion, the other still, neither making any further moves. As the minutes ticked by, sweat beaded on Xin Ziwen's forehead, not subsiding but instead gathering into larger droplets that trickled down his temples. His back was already drenched in sweat, soaking through his clothes. He seemed to have entered a state of intense concentration, his mind racing as he paced, thoughts churning in high gear. After a full quarter of an hour, Xin Ziwen suddenly stopped in his tracks and spun around to face Huo Yuhao. The suddenness of the movement caused the beads of sweat to scatter. "How many core magical formations did you use in total?" Xin Ziwen's voice trembled slightly as he asked. 32, Huo Yuhao replied. "That's impossible. How could there be so few? Do you even know? Do you know what this means?" Xin Ziwen muttered to himself, his eyes fixed on Huo Yuhao with an intense gaze. Huo Yuhao smiled faintly. "Professor Xian, I'm at best a 6th-level soul-guiding master. So, considering that I made this entirely on my own, how many core magical formations do you think I could include? Besides, you've seen its size and the internal structure as well as its exterior. With no additional offensive weaponry, there's very limited space to house core magical formations. So, you tell me, how many could there be?" Xin Ziwen pressed on. "Then how did you manage to make it move without injecting soul power? And even power the flight soul-guiding tool?" Huo Yuhao didn't hesitate, answering as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Soul bottles. I incorporated 12 6th-level soul bottles. Although the soul power in these bottles will dissipate over time, the process is much slower compared to other soul-guiding tools. Theoretically, as long as these 12 bottles are fully charged in advance, the humanoid soul-guiding tool could fly for 1 hour without my soul power, or engage in high-intensity combat for 10 minutes, assuming it has additional offensive soul-guiding tools. I won't get into the internal structure details. It's a bit of a crude method, and still requires a soul master to operate since the bottles need a soul master to recharge." Xin Ziwen stared intently at Huo Yuhao. "How did you know I've been researching ways to prevent soul power from leaking out of soul bottles?" Huo Yuhao blinked in surprise. "I didn't know." "You didn't know?" This time it was Xin Ziwen's turn to be dumbfounded. "Then why did you use soul bottles as the power source for your humanoid soul-guiding tool?" Huo Yuhao looked at him earnestly. "Because it was the only method I could think of. Professor Xian, have you really figured out a way to prevent the soul power in bottles from leaking? That's incredible." If what Xin Ziwen said was true, It would greatly enhance the practicality of the humanoid soul-guiding tool he had designed. But Xin Ziwen immediately changed the subject. That's not the point. The point is, how did you get that humanoid robot to move? How did you manage the balance? Don't the joints need core magical formations to control them? And what about the coordination between the formations? Have you considered how many problems might arise during overall control? Huo Yuhao replied matter-of-factly, "Of course, I've considered all that. Not everything requires core magical formations." "Then what did you use?" Xin Ziwen pressed further. Huo Yuhao chuckled. "I'm sorry, Professor Xian, but that's something I can't share with you. It involves a secret of my clan." 3 black lines immediately appeared on Xin Ziwen's forehead. This kid had been answering everything so candidly, but when it came to the most crucial part, he suddenly pulled the clan secret card. It was obviously a tactic to leave him hanging. Given Xin Ziwen's expertise in soul-guiding tools, after developing a method to seal the soul power in bottles, his next step was naturally to apply this technique to humanoid soul-guiding tools. However, the humanoid soul-guiding tools developed by Mingda Hall were simply too large. Even with 8th-level soul bottles, it would take at least a dozen of them to keep such a device running smoothly for half an hour. In other words, making it operational would require the constant presence of more than a dozen Soul Dolua-level experts with 8 soul rings. And Xin Ziwen was certain that the large device couldn't be as agile as the humanoid metal figure created by Huo Yuhao. What Xin Ziwen valued wasn't Huo Yuhao's craftsmanship. After all, the humanoid metal figure had its own set of issues, and in just a short time, Xin Ziwen had already identified at least 5 or 6 critical flaws. But the key was the concept, the idea. With just 32 core magical formations, Huo Yuhao could get it to move, make it practical, and even operate without soul power. At least enough to make a getaway, right? All this left Xin Ziwen itching with curiosity, his emotions becoming increasingly restless. "Smart kid. Huo Yuhao, you're something else." Xin Ziwen looked at his student with mixed emotions. He knew Huo Yuhao wasn't lying. There was no way that complex humanoid soul-guiding tool could have been entirely his own creation. The structure was so intricate that even multiple generations might struggle to perfect it, let alone in just over 2 years. The critical elements probably were indeed related to his clan. How could he pry those secrets out? Xin Ziwen understood perfectly well. This was Huo Yuhao's way of baiting him. Outwardly, there might not be 10 new innovations, but with this device, he was already hooked on the research. How could he not take the bait? Taking a deep breath, Xin Ziwen said gravely, "Yuhao, how about this? I won't ask for your specific methods. Just share with me the design concept behind this humanoid soul-guiding tool. In return, I'll trade you the method I've just developed for sealing soul power in bottles. You have to understand, this sealing method will have a groundbreaking impact on the development of soul-guiding tools. I haven't reported it to the hall yet, but once it's documented, I'm confident that my sealed bottles will become one of Mingda Hall's most important research achievements. Deal?" Huo Yuhao hesitated. As a 6th-level soul-guiding master, he knew Xin Ziwen was absolutely right. The invention of sealed soul bottles would indeed revolutionize the field of soul-guiding tools. Although the production cost of such bottles would undoubtedly be exorbitant, applying them to humanoid soul-guiding tools would instantly solve the enormous power problem. Though it wouldn't fully address the root issue, considering the scale of Mingda Hall's experimental first humanoid device, lugging around a gigantic soul bottle wasn't out of the question. Although the thought of it was somewhat disturbing. However, this moment of hesitation only lingered in his mind for an instant before he dismissed it. Precisely because of the importance of the sealed soul bottles, he had to win over Xin Ziwen. Professor Xian was simply too formidable when it came to the study of soul-guiding tools. Deal or not? Xin Ziwen was already growing impatient. "Do you think my research isn't as valuable as yours? I can tell that your humanoid soul-guiding tool is far from perfect. It's still just a prototype. If I were to refine it, I guarantee that within 3 years, I could turn it into a fully functional humanoid soul-guiding tool." Huo Yuhao smiled slightly and said, "Of course, I would love for you to perfect it. But I suspect that the thing you want to trade for isn't just this one item, is it? Don't forget, I mentioned earlier that I have 2 pieces of work to show you today." Xin Ziwen's eyes widened in surprise. Are you saying you have another piece of research that's as advanced as this one? Huo Yuhao shook his head. It's not in the same category, but I can say that this second piece is also the result of my hard work. You're right. The humanoid soul-guiding tool is just a semi-finished product. Perfecting it will require continuous testing, experimentation, and innovation. But the second piece I'm about to show you is a finished product. Xin Ziwen immediately urged, then bring it out quickly. Huo Yuhao nodded and raised his right hand, revealing the starlight sapphire ring on his index finger that Xin Ziwen had seen in the previous image. Even someone as composed as Xin Ziwen couldn't help but show a flash of greed in his eyes when he saw the ring. The idea Huo Yuhao had conceived was simply too important to him, but he quickly suppressed that flash of greed, letting his inner sense of integrity prevail. The item Huo Yuhao brought out next was a large one, quite substantial in size and weight. Even with his cultivation and physical strength, he found it a bit difficult to hold. It was a massive fixed installation soul-guided cannonball. The moment this cannonball appeared, Xin Ziwen reacted as if he had seen a ghost, instinctively stumbling backward a few steps. Unlike the excitement he felt upon seeing the humanoid soul-guiding tool, his eyes now reflected a hint of fear. Yes, fear. The fixed installation soul-guided cannonball that Huo Yuhao took out was entirely crimson red, its surface dazzling with intricate patterns. However, not all of these patterns were core magical formations. Some were symbols even Xin Ziwen, an 8th-level soul-guiding master, couldn't recognize. The front end of the cannonball was conical, while the rear was cylindrical, resembling the standard shape of a fixed installation soul-guided cannonball. Despite its red body, it emitted a faint white glow, and it was this seemingly subtle glow that instilled fear in Xin Ziwen. This cannonball, which was over a meter in length with a maximum diameter of more than a foot, required at least an 8th-level fixed installation soul-guided cannon to launch. In other words, theoretically, this was an 8th-level fixed installation soul-guided cannonball. Even in the Sun Moon Empire, which boasted the most advanced soul-guiding tools, fixed installation soul-guided cannonballs above the 7th level were considered strategic assets with immense destructive power. They were also exceedingly rare because, although these one-time use weapons were incredibly powerful, their production consumed a staggering amount of resources, and the manufacturing process was extremely complex, with a high rate of failure. Unlike other soul-guiding tools, when a fixed installation soul-guided cannonball failed during production, the most likely outcome was an explosion. No matter the level of the soul-guiding master, if a fixed installation cannonball of their level exploded during production, survival was nearly impossible. Therefore, high-level fixed installation soul-guided cannonballs were the least desirable to produce, and when they were, it was with extreme caution and focus. So far, Xin Ziwen knew of only 3 9th-level fixed installation soul-guided cannonballs, all of which were stored in the most heavily guarded armory of the Sun Moon Empire. Even someone of Jing Hongqin's status and position as the head of Mingda Hall could only requisition one of them. The exact number of 7th and 8th level fixed installation cannonballs was known only to the Empire's top officials. Thus, Xin Ziwen was utterly shocked that Huo Yuhao could present an 8th level fixed installation soul-guided cannonball. Regardless of its specific attributes, its 8th level power alone would be enough to obliterate the entire Sun Moon Royal Soul-Guiding Master Academy. No wonder Huo Yuhao had been so confident in showing him the humanoid soul-guiding tool. He had such a powerful weapon in his possession. Without considering personal safety, there were at least 7 or 8 ways to detonate a fixed installation soul-guided cannonball, and it didn't necessarily require a fixed installation cannon to launch it. "Did you make this?" Xin Ziwen asked, stunned as he looked at Huo Yuhao. Even he couldn't guarantee that he could successfully create an 8th-level fixed installation soul-guided cannonball, and he certainly wouldn't try. He was passionate about research, but he valued his life too much. Huo Yuhao nodded, smiling. "Professor Xian, don't you think this is just a shell?" Xin Ziwen snorted in frustration. "Are you questioning my expertise? The exterior can be faked, but the aura cannot. Soul-guiding tools above the 7th level possess their own souls and emit their own unique energy fields. The aura of this cannonball is so peculiar, yet its energy field is so strong that I suspect it might even be 9th level. How could that be possible? Huo Yuhao smiled. Nothing is impossible. This is the result of my painstaking efforts. Of course, it's not entirely my own capability. If it were just me, I couldn't have designed and completed the entire blueprint for such a cannonball. I did have a bit of help, and those elements that assisted me are secrets of my clan. But it's fine. You can take a closer look at it. I'm even more satisfied with this than with the humanoid soul-guiding tool. As Huo Yuhao spoke, he struggled to place the massive cannonball upright on the ground, then stepped back a few paces, gesturing for Xin Ziwen to examine it. Without hesitation, Xin Ziwen quickly approached and began inspecting the cannonball closely, gently running his hands over its surface. The moment his hand made contact, Xin Ziwen shuddered and looked up at Huo Yuhao in shock. Such a strong aura of malice, and it's mutated. If this thing explodes, it will bring about untold devastation. Aren't you afraid that creating such a powerful weapon will go against the will of heaven? Huo Yuhao sneered. And how many fewer weapons like this has Mingda Hall produced? Truly powerful weapons can actually ensure peace, because no one would dare start a war, risking retaliation. It's not the strength of the weapon that's frightening, but the person who uses it. Xin Ziwen fell silent and continued to study the cannonball in front of him. The cannonball was entirely blood-red, emitting a faint white glow that carried an eerie spiritual resonance, almost as if it were alive. Soon, Xin Ziwen's attention was drawn to a particular design on its surface. It was a blooming lotus flower, seemingly unrelated to core magical formations, yet intricately detailed. The lotus was black, contrasting sharply with the blood red of the cannonball, making it even more noticeable. At the center of this black lotus wasn't a typical lotus seed pod but a black skull, the source of the most intense malice. Xin Ziwen gently traced the patterns on the cannonball, his eyes gradually showing a look of fascination. His fingers occasionally tapped lightly, though he was careful not to touch it too forcefully and had no intention of attempting to dismantle it. Every fixed installation soul-guided cannonball has a self-destruct mechanism. Any attempt to dismantle it would likely trigger an explosion. Xin Ziwen was well aware of this. I can't understand how you made this. It took a full quarter-hour before Xin Ziwen straightened up and confessed. His gaze toward Huo Yuhao had changed, now one of respect, almost as if the traditional teacher-student relationship had shifted to one of equals. It seems I underestimated your talent in soul-guiding tools. You've truly given me a remarkable surprise. Huo Yuhao held up 2 fingers. Actually, I've given you 2 surprises. I've named this fixed installation Soul-Guided Cannonball Ghost's Bane. I sincerely hope it never has to be used on a battlefield. I hope so too, Xin Ziwen agreed, nodding deeply. Through his earlier observation, he had realized that this cannonball was unlike any he had ever seen before, completely innovative in its design. Even when he tried tapping it to gauge its internal structure, he couldn't discern anything. This was an entirely new type of fixed installation soul-guided cannonball, and its potential power was beyond his ability to assess. But the spiritual aura and malice it emitted were certainly not fabricated. Xin Ziwen could confidently say that this was at least an 8th-level fixed installation soul-guided cannonball. Is it 8th level? Or 9th? Xin Ziwen's breathing quickened as he asked. Huo Yuhao thought for a moment before answering seriously. If it's aimed at buildings, it could be classified as 8th level at most. But if it's aimed at an army, I can say without hesitation that it's 9th level. I spent more than a year just researching it, followed by numerous small-scale experiments and basic tests. Finally, after returning from my break this time, I began assembling it. So, you've been working on this for the past few months? Xin Ziwen inquired. Huo Yuhao nodded. I'm not even sure if I could create another one, and I can tell you honestly that there are elements within this cannonball that you wouldn't understand, nor could any soul-guiding master, even at the 9th level. Xin Ziwen suddenly smiled bitterly. I have to admit, you've impressed me. The 2 surprises you've given me have had a profound impact, but I need some time to think it over. Huo Yuhao smiled gently. Of course, take your time. The doors of the Tang clan are always open to you. If you choose to join us, you can pick any position you like. I can also give you a little more information. 10,000 years ago, Under the leadership of our first clan master, the Tang clan reached its peak. That clan master eventually became a god, creating a legendary era on the continent. Back then, our clan's rise was due to our expertise in hidden weapons. It wasn't until soul-guiding tools emerged that hidden weapons gradually fell out of favor. Many of my research achievements are based on the Tang clan's hidden weapons, combining their intricate mechanisms with soul-guiding tools. I believe that by integrating these two, we can create extraordinary innovations. I'll be honest with you too. My research has been very focused, but my overall abilities as a soul-guiding master are far inferior to yours. If you were to join the Tang clan, I'm confident that you could achieve even greater success in merging hidden weapons with soul-guiding tools. Xin Ziwen took a deep breath. You'd better put that cannonball away and never bring it out again. I'll be going now. With that, he turned and left, not looking back. Huo Yuhao carefully stored away Ghost's Bane, feeling a great sense of relief. In truth, Ghost's Bane was only a semi-finished product. Its core was not yet complete, as it was far too complex for Huo Yuhao's current abilities. He would need to reach the 7-ring level before he could fully inscribe it and complete the cannonball. Creating an 8th-level fixed installation soul-guided cannonball was no easy feat. Why hadn't someone as skilled as Xin Ziwen noticed anything amiss? It was because Huo Yuhao had integrated necromantic magic taught to him by the necromantic sage, Electrolux, into Ghost's Bane. This magic didn't belong to their world. Even if Jing Hongqian were present, he wouldn't be able to make sense of it either. As it stood, Ghost's Bane was more of a psychological weapon. It didn't yet possess any real power. But Huo Yuhao hadn't lied. If Ghost's Bane were ever completed, its power could indeed rival, or even surpass, that of a 9th-level fixed installation soul-guided cannonball. However, this weapon couldn't be tested. Its true power would remain unknown until it was actually used in combat. As Xin Ziwen left, Huo Yuhao wasn't worried at all. He knew that Professor Xin was already intrigued, and with his dedication to soul-guiding tools, how could he not be drawn in? The designs and concepts Huo Yuhao had shared would save Xin Ziwen at least a decade of research. Combined with Xin Ziwen's own innovations, it could very well lead to groundbreaking advancements in soul-guiding tools. After a simple dinner, Huo Yuhao lay down and quickly fell asleep. Even though Ghost's Bane was only a semi-finished product, it had drained nearly all his energy. He was utterly exhausted. He slept soundly until dawn. Opening the window, he breathed in the crisp, slightly damp morning air, feeling his mind instantly clear. Taking regular breaks really did feel great. As he gazed at the faint light of dawn gradually spreading across the sky, the purple hue in his eyes deepened. He had never stopped practicing his purple demon eyes technique over the years.